Jamie, thank you so much. Great introduction and great context. And I'm going to share my screen. And might need the host to enable me to do that. I'll keep trying until this happens. But in the meantime, I wanted everyone to know that if we were live in person, this would be funner, right? We would have this opportunity to see each other and to interact and things like that. And in the last few months, just like else, I've become pretty practiced with remote presentations and remote engagement. So what we would like to do is, as well as describing what we're going to be doing with the assessment of the ILS, like to have kind of a keynote type of experience right now. So take yourself all together. Let's pretend we're all together in the same room. Imagine how beautiful that will be when we're able to do that. And let's have a shared experience here. So I'm going to start the slideshow and we will begin rolling. And number one, I love the logo. It is so awesome. This is the first time that I've seen the logo, and it was so cool when Jamie sent that. Introduction, as Jamie said, I'm a longtime Colorado resident. In fact, my first library experience was at Loveland Public Library, and that's where I learned everything I needed to know about how libraries connect with their communities. And actually, it skewed my entire view of what libraries are, and really set into cement what a library could be and should be in terms of how a library relates to its community. And since then, I've worked in a lot of different contexts. My last full-time job was at Fort Collins Public Library, but before that, I worked for the High Plains Regional Library Service System that was based in Greeley. And in Colorado, there used to be 7 regional systems. Now there's one called CLIC, but there used to be 7 regional systems, and I was in the northeast part of Colorado, and worked on a lot of statewide projects. But it was there that I fell in love with rural libraries, because what I like about rural libraries, and I work with libraries of all sizes, mind you, like the largest, I work with lots of state organizations, like in New Jersey, which is like a whole different story, as an example. But what I like about working with small libraries is, as soon as you discover a need, the agility that you have, if the resources are available, if you have the people, if you have the money, you start making changes right away. This is incredibly powerful today, this agility. And as we know, during COVID-19, the most agile libraries are the ones that are having the most success in their communities, because things just keep on changing, and that change is not going to stop for a while. And I think smaller libraries are actually better suited for understanding their communities and having that reaction. That said, the reason I do this for a living is I believe in the public service mission of all libraries, whether they're a public library, an academic library, or a special library. We provide access in the age of information in a way that no company ever would. No, there's not money. We would not invent libraries today because there's no money in this sort of model that we have. However, this is really good for humanity. And so what we do for our communities by providing that equity of access is incredibly powerful. And that's why I do this as a consultant. That's my why behind everything I do. So before we get started, though, I just wanted to kind of warm things up. We're not going to have voting or anything like that, but it's just, I want you to ponder this question. Everyone's been doing these remote meetings constantly, and I was wondering what the most surprising thing is that you've learned about yourself or a coworker in terms of this. Maybe you've discovered that family members, roommates, and pets make pretty good coworkers. That's something that I've found for sure. Or maybe you roommates and pets make pretty awful coworkers. We have both dogs and cats in our house, and the dog in this picture with the hoodie and the glasses scares me, because that dog looks like it knows what's going on. And of course, the cat picture, that's just what the cat does. Isn't that great? The other option that I think a lot of us have noticed is that easy access to the kitchen is the best thing ever, right? It's really nice to be able to grab some healthy food and to keep yourself powered up through the day. But also, easy access to the kitchen can be the worst. thing ever. And mind you, I love spam. I love spam, and thus therein lies the problem. And then, of course, the final thing that you may have learned about yourself or about a coworker is dressing mullet style, which is business on the top and party on the back, on the bottom or in the back, is the best thing ever. So I'm not going to ask anyone how they're dressed today. Everyone looks so beautiful and professional, and we're going to leave it at that. And I'm not going to reveal anything either. Short sleeve shirt, because it's a warm day in our part of the world. So the needs assessment, we have a real deliberate approach to this. Number one, the current ILS, the Source Dynamic System, has been in use for 18 years. And so it's a good opportunity and a good time to evaluate the performance of the ILS. This is even more important today than it ever used to be, because the roots of our ILS systems, they are in 1970s mainframe architecture roots. Okay, so the first systems were designed around mainframe type computing environments. We have much different computing environments today at the core, but that's a long time. And so this is a good time to be looking at how things are performing. We are going to take a satisfaction survey approach, because that's a really fair way to look at a lot of complex issues. So we're going to be thinking about current needs that WYLD libraries have, as well as possible future needs. And we know that we've got a diverse group of libraries, different sizes. We have community colleges, education, publics, all sorts of things. We also are going to take 2 tracks of inquiry, and this is something that I found to be very helpful, because if we weigh things too far in one direction, we miss the full picture. So we're hoping that we get a full picture from looking at technical and technology pieces of this, and the user experience of using the ILS. And so this is the experience of library staff using the ILS, but it's also what our patrons encounter, because as we know, we're moving more to digital services. We want to make sure that as a tool, our digital services work super great, and that they serve our communities and our patrons and our students very well. Through this, we will define criteria for the best system for Wyoming libraries. And of course, we're going to be using remote options as needed. Before COVID hit, we anticipated, of course, a lot of in-person gatherings. And if the opportunity arises to do that, I'm close, which is nice. You have no idea how much I love working at home. Not at home in my house, but at home in the community that I love and live in. So this is super wonderful. However, we are fully ready to do remote options for the entire process here. This is something I do anyway, that I did before COVID. The nice thing now is that everyone else is doing this too, so folks are more used to this option, but we're ready to do things in that manner, and to make sure that the experience online is engaging and not a chore, because all these meetings can be difficult. We have an incredibly awesome ILS needs assessment team. Kate, of course, WYLD board president. We have Desiree, Jamie, Mark, Bobby, Katie, and then me and my wonderful assistant Bonnie Nichols, who's on the call as well. Bonnie takes notes, helps with facilitation, and she used to work in the circulation department at the Poudre River Public Library District in Fort Collins. And so she knows her stuff. She knows and loves libraries, and is a great part of our team going forward. But I just have to say, I got everyone to smile for the camera here for this group shot, and I was so glad to do that. This is a great team that you have at WYLD, and just even in our early formation of the group and working together, it's been a joy and a great experience. And so I've nothing but the greatest enthusiasm for working together and working on this project together. Here's a rough task and timelines that we're doing. We've actually gotten started, right? On April 29th, we had a team kickoff meeting. And on the 7th, I did a brief presentation for the WYLD board. In between that, with the team, we've been talking about a lot of different aspects of the study, and of course, preparing for this. This is our kickoff, and this is where we're at today. This is the kind of the soft launch of the project. Now, coming up next, and these are the things for you to expect as a WYLD member. In late June, I'm going to send out an idea sheet to help prepare everyone for the evaluation process. So I know everyone's very busy. We are busy people, and we're even more busy with reopening, with protests right now, with all the environmental things. We can plan that that's going to be part of our life, that things are going to be difficult in terms of all this reactive stuff that we have to do. I'm going to keep that in mind in this process. I'm going to make it as easy for you to participate as I possibly can. And I should say, if you have ideas along the way where I can do a better job, just let me know. Just send them to me, and we'll incorporate that into our process. So part of that is later this month, I'm going to send out an idea sheet to help prepare everyone for the evaluation process. And this will just be a brief document that will kind of get your juices flowing around the questions that I would like to ask you for the next step. And then the next step is this summer, probably in early July. Not in the middle of summer reading, not at the end of summer reading, but somewhere where things have calmed down a little bit for our public library folks. I'm going to send out a survey to start getting a feel for the major issues. And again, we're going to be looking at the technology, of course, and the platform of the ILS, but also the user experience. User experience is equally important to any of the technology-related things. In the August to September timeframe, we're going to have a follow-up with, depending on the results of the survey and the information that we hear back from you, we will set up targeted specific focus groups to address the most compelling issues that come up. So we're not sure exactly what groups we'll be pulling together for that, but we do know that these will be based around topics that you raise as being important. We'll also probably have individual interviews as needed within that time frame as well. And that's to do a deeper dive on our work. In October, we will have a live or remote focus group with the directors to coincide with the directors retreat. So if that's an in-person event, I'll be there, and if it's a remote virtual event, I'll be there too, but we'll be ready either way. And then we will position this so that we have a final report ready shortly after the director's retreat. Because as Jamie said, this is the first part of whatever is to come next. And there's no conclusions that we're drawing at this point, of course. We want to discover and have a very good discovery process, but we need to plan for any eventuality, including next steps. For instance, looking at any options or alternates, depending on what this process tells us. Staying connected is very important these days, and so we have a very simple connection framework that I wanted to share with you. This is supposed to scale to all size libraries, and we're hoping that this works. So staying connected should work whether you are part of a very small library or if you're part of a larger library. So we're going to use the existing WYLD communications method of the list, the WYLD discussion list. Will be the primary way that I'll interact with you, or different members of the team will interact with you. And Bonnie will interact with you a little bit later today. She'll be the first interaction from my office. So we'll be testing that out. And this will go out the way that will go after today, as we will designate one library representative for each library. And so we'll be primarily communicating to that library representative. And in a small library, that library representative would be connecting with any others in the library. If it's a very small library, this might not be a big deal at all, right? So that's super easy. And for larger small libraries, that person would still be responsible for coordinating the library's response to the questions. So this will become the most important, I think, when we send the survey out, because I think it would be wonderful if you took those survey questions when you get them. Both documents, actually. The document where we're kind of warming up folks' thoughts around different issues, and then the actual survey itself to discuss it before filling that survey out. Larger libraries, it actually will work exactly the same. But at larger libraries, there might be more internal departments to coordinate with. And so there might be different groups within the libraries, of course, different departments in larger libraries, different individuals. That'll be up to you in terms of the coordination that you might need to do. But we will expect that you're able to connect with your stakeholders who have an interest and have some input that we should understand and know about with the ILS evaluation. So that's our overall structure. So let's start this process of getting ready to think about the ILS, because I'm a technologist. I know very well that if things are working, we don't think about them very much. We just kind of let it go. But I want you to start thinking about this, because your thoughts about this will guide what happens with this study. So I'd like to hop in a time machine really quick. Let's go all the way back to a completely different world. Fall 2019. Fall 2019. I'd put together this survey for library people, and I was surprised at the response that I got. It wasn't intended to be a huge nationwide survey, but that's what ended up happening. And I didn't just do it on a whim. Actually, I was working for a large tech company who hired me to have a better understanding of libraries. And this tech company does not make library products per se, but they wanted to understand a little bit about the tech company. So about libraries. So they had hired me to, as it turned out, to do one of the hardest things I've ever done as a consultant. And that was essentially to describe the library genome. That's what it felt like. We have a very diverse, unique, interesting community, and trying to parse that out and to describe it to an outsider is hard. It was very difficult. But in the process, I found that I was using my experience. And I've been doing this for 25, 30 years or so. I was using my experience and leaning on that. And I thought, I better not just trust my own perceptions. I think I've got to test my perceptions against the community. The good news is I found out that most of my perceptions were right on, but there were also some surprises that came up in the survey. So I'm going to give you a little preview of the survey because I haven't released it yet. I was overwhelmed with the results that we got. I'm busy with like other work, right? Primary work. And this is a complex thing to unravel, but I finally came up with a way to unravel. So you're actually getting a preview of this. I shared some of this data on a webinar a couple of weeks ago for like a bigger, like a nationwide international audience, but I did not share the ILS data. So I'm going to share with you the ILS pieces. I was doing this webinar for an ILS company, and so we decided not to touch that, and it was not relevant to the topic. So this is, though. So I want you to dig into this with me. Now, one common assumption is that we are more different than alike as libraries, and this is what I'm primarily thinking about is the differences between public and academic and special libraries. There's a lot of cohesiveness around public libraries, but if anyone's a member of ALA, American Library Association, you know that the divisions within ALA, the divisions and subdivisions are staggering, right? There's just so much going on that it seems like we are really different. But we're not as different around a certain topic, which is our feelings about technology. So on this survey, I also took a customer satisfaction approach, but a very broad one. Again, I just wanted to take a very quick temperature check. I started with public libraries, but based on the overwhelming responses, which I on the public side, I think we had 600 or 700 responses, and then I quickly did a academic survey, academic and specials, got another 300-400 responses. It was interesting. So even the number of years for the people responding to the survey, the number of years they had working in libraries were similar, right? And that was the first piece of data that I looked at, and I thought, that's interesting, isn't it? That to have similarities there. Specifically around technology, we don't have a lot of differences. We have much more in common and are much more cohesive. But here's the deal. Even though we're united in our feelings about our technology are mixed. And the best analogy that I could come up with, something brand new that I've never heard anyone do before, but it feels right to me, is that on one side, we've got these positive feelings about technology. Like I've got lots of positive feelings about saltwater taffy, especially nice, fresh saltwater taffy. We we also know that technology is something that's powerful and provides a spark for our resources, right? So a nice, fresh spark plug. In looking at the results, I saw that even if we like that fresh taffy, if we use that analogy, we have experienced our share of the dried up old stuff that wants to crack our teeth. And on the spark plug side, we have our share of spark plugs that are beyond the end of their useful life. And so if I were to make a visual for you, I would say to pour in fresh saltwater taffy and very old hard saltwater taffy, brand new spark plugs and the worst fouled spark plugs you ever saw, put it in a box and mix it up. And that is how we feel about our technology. And I'll show you why I feel that way. There was lots of interest in the topic, 616 responses from public libraries, and my apologies, 187 academic and special library responses. The only reason for the smaller number of academics is I didn't expect that survey to take off as well as it did. So I quickly came up with a second survey so that we could compare. When we look at the satisfaction we have with our technology devices offered to library users, it's interesting. As you can see, whether we're a public library or an academic or special, we have this curve that looks about the same. So the green is very satisfied. The blue is somewhat satisfied. In the middle is neither satisfied nor dissatisfied. The turquoise is somewhat dissatisfied, and the orange is very dissatisfied. And like I said, as you can see, this is very interesting to me that we feel kind of the same way about the things that we're offering to library users. So these would be our desktop computers, our mobile technology, anything, our AV systems, anything in our library technology related. And a lot of the things were around computers, of course, and computers and maintenance. Same thing with the ease of use of digital services. As we know, our ILS connects us to our physical materials, but it also connects us to databases and downloadables and all sorts of things. And as you can see, that the only difference in the curve of the result or of the feedback is that our academic and special libraries have a higher level of somewhat dissatisfaction with these services. This makes total sense when you realize that our academic colleagues and special colleagues have much more of a reliance on digital resources and much more of an investment in that than publics do. In publics, we've got a really great mix of physical and digital. It's a little bit more equitable in that way. On the other side of things, on the academic side, there's much more reliance and growth around the digital services. So again, that's really, really interesting. But let's dig into the ILS. Oh, and just quickly, the internet connection, I was happy to see that most folks were pretty happy with it. That's something that I work on a lot. This varies, though, of course, based on where the community is located, what bandwidth is accessible, et cetera. And I know how challenged rural areas are. But let's look at the ILS. This is the brand new stuff that no one's seen yet. So are you ready? Are you ready? Preview. Here it comes. Again, we have a similar curve, except for academic libraries being somewhat dissatisfied. And I wanted to dig into a little bit more about why we have such a mixed bag when it comes to our reactions here. Because when you look at this, you could say, well, wait a minute, Carson, on the public side, it looks like if you added up those bars that most people were very satisfied or somewhat satisfied with the performance of the ILS, even though there's a significant number on the other side of things. On the academic side, of course, it's almost a wash. It looks like there's an equal amount of satisfaction and dissatisfaction with the ILS. This concerns me very much just on its surface, because our ILS is our primary business machine. We live and die on it. It takes care of our major business functions. This should look more like our internet curve, right? Where we're mostly happy with what's going on with some dissatisfaction. I look at this and I think that's not good. This is a kind of a red flag, a sign that I don't like to see. So I did something else. I used a company that has artificial intelligence to go through comments, because I also, as well as asking people to vote on things, I asked for comments, and two observations about those comments. Number one, the most insightful comments I've ever seen were included in the survey. People were so gracious with their thoughts and sharing their thoughts. The other is that as I was reading them, I started getting confused, because I would see kind of a mix of comments like, yeah, I like this, but most of the time I hate it. And I thought, whoa, this is really different. Since we had so many, I needed to use a different sort of approach to like harvesting this information and getting something that's not subjective, even though comments are subjective information. I wanted to put a little bit more hard edges around it so that we could understand it. So when we looked at the comments, and these were all the comments, you know, no matter how someone felt about their ILS, what we found is that the majority in each case were negative comments. And so, you know, 59% on the academic and special side, 54% on the library side. Not too surprising, because, you know, if we like things, we don't always comment on it, right? We just like it and we move on. If we don't like something, then dang it, we're going to go to that comment box and fill out a comment on it. So that wasn't too surprising. So I decided to do one more area of analysis. I thought, I'm thinking when I'm reading these things, I am seeing this mixed bag in the comments that I don't quite understand. I wonder what the sentiment analysis would tell me of those people who ranked their ILS are being somewhat satisfied or very satisfied with their ILS. What would they say? Holy cow, look at this. So on the library side, still close to 50% of those comments were negative. Even if they liked what they had, it was negative. On the academic and special side, almost 67% negative comments about something that the respondents said they liked. So the purpose for telling you this, you might be saying, Carson, I know that the ILS is not perfect. I've got this mixed feeling too. This is exactly the sort of feedback that we want to get from you when we are doing the ILS evaluation. If you feel mixed about your response to things, that is perfectly normal, according to this survey and according to me. That's perfectly normal. And that I want to encourage you to be as honest as possible, because we, as you know, we are going forward in uncharted territory when it comes to our world. The best thing we can do is to do a great assessment, to recognize when things are a mixed bag and not be afraid if it seems ambiguous. There's always a way to come through things that are ambiguous to come up with direction. And that's a sort of leadership that we want to provide for you as an ILS study group, but we can't do that without your input and without understanding your voice. So I'm hoping that that encourages you to, if you're feeling weird about it, that's perfectly fine, and express that. in that way. The survey also explored some other stuff like Wi-Fi satisfaction, different staff questions, general comments about the state of library technology. And so what I want to do is in the coming weeks, I'll be completing that survey finally, now that I have a way to parse that ambiguous information. And we will share that with you as soon as it's available. You'll be among the first to hear about the availability of the survey, and we'll publish that on the WYLD list. Now, to sum up this semi-keynote sort of approach, because that's what we're trying to do, wanted to give you the assurance that given the times that we're in, we are reacting in a perfectly normal manner. But I want to talk about the difference between reactive and proactive, because we've been forced into a reactive posture for many months now. And I'm someone who believes that I'm always a little suspicious about being forced into a reactive posture. I'm not suspicious about the things happening in our world as much as the way that I'm approaching the things that are happening in our world. I myself get restless if I'm not able to think, to rise above the events that are happening directly to me and think strategically about where I want to go and how I take things that are happening and turn them in the direction that I would like to turn those. And so that's what the rest of this brief talk is about. I know that right now, everything feels like our timeline feels like this. There were things that happened in the past. Ancient times were January 2020. It was a world away in so many ways, and that is true. And the future is so amorphous, it's hard to even think about. And it might be scary because every day it seems like we've got something new that's challenging, right? So we've got this big red zone right in our face right now, and it seems like this is everything that we have. In terms of how time actually works, I don't know if this map is completely accurate, but the proportions are accurate, right? This red zone that we're in will pass. When this passes, we need to be prepared for our next steps. Our job as libraries is way too important to be put into this reactive mode forever. We need to think about the experiences that we're having right now, learn from those experiences, and start making steps to guide things where we need to in our own communities. And so the reactive mode was cool for a while. It was totally okay. But I believe that right now is the time to start moving into proactive work. And that's my pledge to you in this ILS assessment. It doesn't matter what's going on in our world or the ILS world. That's also changing quite a bit. It doesn't matter. We're going to start with actually understanding what the needs are and then let the solutions reveal themselves. But they're going to be based on the needs, not on the solution, not on the reactive mode, but on a strategic, proactive mode. That's our job. I want to encourage everyone to be aware of controversies as they're happening. Trust yourselves. I know that everyone in your community, you're going to do the right thing if you're able to trust yourself and to, your communities more than anyone else. I just want to give you that encouragement. Trust yourself to understand your situation and your needs, and trust your gut. The rest of the world is going to keep reacting. We're going to be, we've gotten so used to reacting. I think that's one of the things that has inflamed things even more recently is this idea of reactive mode. We have a new thing to react to, no matter where we are in the political spectrum. And so I believe that that's part of the issue, is that idea of just reacting all the time. Anticipate that this will happen. Things will happen like this that are going to throw us off, and try to steer clear of the things that get in your way, the things that are bad. I've got a big prediction, and this is something I want you to think about for a moment, that goes outside of any upheaval that we have in our library world with disease and pestilence and natural disasters and politics and human disasters. And that is this. It only takes about 6 weeks to develop a habit. Okay, that's science, right? If we do something for about 6 weeks, chances are we might keep doing it. So what have we all been doing for more than 6 weeks at this point? We have been using digital resources. Now, more so than ever. Like before COVID came along, I think most people would they had one of two attitudes about it. Some people love the digital lifestyle. They do all the remote stuff. They do things on their smartphone, etc. Other people said, I don't need that, so I'm not going to do it. I'm not even going to learn about it. Well, guess what? Everybody has had to have some experience with digital service. I'm not saying that everyone loves digital services, but I am saying that everyone now knows that there are options to how they're able to function in their life, right? There's digital options for everything. Sometimes it's, picking up food even, or reaching out to loved ones, communicating with the library. We have lists that are very long, but the idea is that this expectation of having this as an option, I believe, will be one of the results when we are through COVID-19. And so I want you to be ready. I want all libraries to be ready, but specifically, I want your library to be ready. The survey shows that we're doing okay in some areas, but need improvement in others, right, in terms of technology. So I think we should all seize the day to plan now. And so I'm going to give you a resource. This is not anything that's required. This is just something to use if you choose to use, because I think the future that we make together is in the actions that we choose to do now. And taking an action means optimizing the influence that we have over this constant reactive mode that we're in. So I've got this worksheet that I'm going to send out, and it's a worksheet for you to gather your thoughts in 3 specific areas. The first is thinking about assess your library services during this time. It can be technology services, physical services, it doesn't matter. But the idea is to name the service, to talk about the strengths and successes that you experienced during COVID-19, and also identify the difficulties and failures. The example that I'm giving on the worksheet is a lot of folks have done story times on YouTube. A possible strength was a high number of views and very positive responses in the comments. Maybe some of the difficulties were licensing or permission to share some materials. It's really good to do this sort of assessment and catch it while you're in the heat of battle instead of trying to remember it later. I promise you'll forget many things, and they might be key things. The second area is technology related, but it can also be related to physical infrastructure. I want you to take a moment to assess how well your infrastructures have been in being able to support you in delivering services. So the infrastructure item that I'm using for an example is Wi-Fi. So let's say that in this case, the library decided that Wi-Fi being always on was something that they did to enable access to users outside of the library building. The strengths and successes that this library had was they were able to serve many people during the closure, and many users observed social distancing. So there wasn't a health or safety hazard brought by the sharing of Wi-Fi. Difficulties and failures for this library might have been that the Wi-Fi signal was weak in some areas, and with one park bench in this particular library, it wasn't always easy to support social distancing. So this is an example of capturing just your experiences. You don't need to make any decisions about them yet, unless, and I predict that as you're writing this down, you will come up with ideas for future actions. You may or may not be able to perform these actions, but grabbing them now while they're hot and on your mind, I believe will be extremely powerful for you in the future. So we're just going to send access to that worksheet out on the WYLD list later today. It'll be Bonnie's first shot as a member of the WYLD list. And I hope it's something that is useful for you. I want to thank you so much for letting me talk with you today about the ILS assessment process and for us to try this keynote sort of event online. And I'd like to answer any questions you have or hear any comments that you might have for me.